Hey, I'm golf broadcaster Matt Adams. The updated and expanded second edition of my book, The Golf Round I'll Never Forget, Golf's Biggest Stars Recall Their Finest Moments, is now available. Readers can expect to march with Arnie's Army at the 1960 U.S. Open, relive Jack Nicklaus's remarkable 1986 Masters win, and be amazed by the Tiger Slam. The Golf Round I'll Never Forget, Golf's Biggest Stars Recall Their Finest Moments. Pick it up where fine books are sold, including BarnesandNoble.com and Amazon.com.
This Day in Sports History. Hey, and welcome to This Day in Sports History. It's May 31st, and on this day in 1999, it was the Memorial Day Miracle in San Antonio. This was Game 2 of the Western Conference Finals between the Portland Trailblazers and the San Antonio Spurs. The Spurs had a 1-0 series lead, but here in Game 2, on their home court, they were disappointing the 35,000 that had come out to the Alamo Dome. At one point in the third quarter, the Spurs trailed by 18, but they used a 17-2 run to claw their way back into it, and then relied on some late-game heroics by Sean Elliott. Down 2 with 12 seconds to play, the Spurs had the ball out of bounds, and here's what it sounded like on that day.
12 seconds left in regulation, and the Trailblazers still hanging on by 2. The inbounds comes into Elliott, a right corner 3. Oh, side! San Antonio takes the lead. The 6th three-pointer today for Sean Elliott.
It was the first lead for San Antonio all night, and it came on Elliott's 6th three-pointer. Now, several amazing things about that shot. One, Portland's Stacey Augmon brushed Elliott trying to steal the inbound pass, which pushed Elliott off balance. The tightrope that Elliott had to walk just to stay in bounds was amazing. If his heels go down, well, he's out of bounds. Ball turned over. Second, 6 feet 11-inch Rasheed Wallace was running at him, right arm outstretched to block the shot. But Elliott adjusted the launch angle to get it over the outstretched arm of Wallace. And lastly, and this was not known for a few more months, but Elliott had been diagnosed with focal glomerulosclerosis, which is a kidney disorder and it causes chronic tiredness. He had been dealing with it for 7 years, but on this night, Elliott found the reserve he needed to hit the big shot to sink the Blazers in Game 2. Elliott made his announcement about his condition on July 21st that year and also said he needed a kidney transplant. His brother Noel donated one of his kidneys to Sean with the surgery performed in August. 7 months later, he was back on the basketball court in a Spurs uniform. He was the first NBA player to ever play after undergoing an organ transplant. Off to 1983 we go, when the Philadelphia 76ers finally figured out how to beat the Los Angeles Lakers in a 7-game series. So this was Game 4 of the NBA Finals between the Sixers and the Lakers. These two had met in the 1980 Finals and again in '82. When Julius Erving had done what Julius Erving always did in those 2 previous Finals, well, Philly came up short, like a lot of teams, because they had had an issue with Kareem's skyhook. That skyhook killed the Sixers and just about every team in the NBA in the previous 2 meetings. So after the loss in the '82 Finals, the Sixers went out and they got Moses Malone from the Houston Rockets. And that turned out to be the missing piece. Malone led the Sixers in scoring in all 4 games of the Finals, topping it off with a 24-point, 23-rebound performance on this day. Dr. J was key down the stretch, though. His steal and dunk with 2:01 to play tied the game at 106. He had a 3-point play a minute later, and then his top-of-the-key jumper with 24 seconds left was more than they needed, as Philadelphia won 115-108 to sweep Los Angeles in 4 games and win their first NBA title in 16 years. The Sixers had blasted their way through the playoffs, winning 12 of 13 games, and if this seems like an early end to the NBA season and the playoffs, well, you're not wrong. This was the last time the finals and the NBA season ended before June. May 31st was also a good day of the year for golfer Sam Snead. On this day in 1941, Snead captured his first major title with a win at the PGA Championship in New Jersey. At this point, the PGA was a match play event and would stay that way until 1957. He and Jim Ternessa played a 36-hole match, and Snead waited until the 35th to pull out a little magic, holding a 60-foot chip for birdie to win the hole and the match 2-1. As soon as the trophy was awarded, the check was placed in his hands. Snead departed for the Navy to begin his military service in World War II. The PGA Championship would not be played in 1943, but would return in 1944. 8 years later on this day, Snead won his second PGA Championship, this time beating Jimmy Palmer on the Hermitage Country Club in Mannequin-Sabot, Virginia. Palmer had been destroying his opponents on his march to the finals. He won 7 and 6 in the quarters, meaning he led by 7 holes with 6 to play. His semifinal match with Lloyd Mangrum, he won 6 and 5. But Snead's smooth and steady game calmed the storm in the finals, and after the pair finished the morning 18 all square, the afternoon 18 was all about Snead. When Sammy birdied the par 3 13th, that put him up 3 with just 5 to play, and that put the pressure on Palmer. Nothing but pars were in the bag for him, though, and Snead closed it out 3 and 2 to win the title. At 27 years old, he was, at that time, the oldest to ever win the PGA Championship. He would come back to win one more 2 years later. In 2013, Australian golfer Andrew Dodt became the first player on the European Golf Tour to drop 2 aces during the same competitive round. His first ace came on his second hole. After a couple of birdies, a couple of bogeys, he came to the 16th hole, hit an 8-iron that he thought was a bit too much, but it landed, spun back, and dropped in the hole for his second ace of the day. He carded a 765, despite, by his own admission, not putting well that day. But I guess if you're dunking it from the tee box, who needs to putt, right? And on this day in 1927, the rarest play in baseball happened for the second time in 2 days. Triple plays are pretty rare. On average, only about 5 triple plays happen each season. Rarer still is the unassisted triple play, where only one guy is responsible for all 3 putouts on the same play. Well, on this day, the Detroit Tigers were at home against the Cleveland Indians. The Tigers were hanging on to a 1-0 lead in the top of the 9th, but pitcher Rip Collins gave up a walk and then a base hit to put runners on first and second. The next batter had a chance to be the hero. He ripped a Collins pitch down the first base line, but first baseman Johnny Noon snagged the line drive for the first out. He stepped on the bag, catching the runner trying to make it back to first for the second out. And then, here's the weird part. He saw the man that had been on second nearly at third and now was retreating back to second. Noon, however, did not throw the ball. His shortstop implored him to throw it, but instead, he ran to second and got to the bag before the runner to record the unassisted triple play and end the game. But what makes this even more rare is that it was the second day in a row that an unassisted triple play had been pulled off in the majors. When the Chicago Cubs played the Pittsburgh Pirates on the 30th, shortstop Jimmy Cooney pulled off the unassisted triple play feat. Back-to-back days, unassisted triple plays. That's the only time in baseball history that that's happened. Now, some numbers to illustrate how weird this was. Since 1900, so 124 years of baseball, there have been only 17 unassisted triple plays recorded in the majors. After Noon's feat on this day in 1927, the next one did not happen for another 40 years. Time now for a non-sports Did You Know? If bees were paid a minimum wage of $7.25 an hour, your jar of honey would cost about $182,000. Let's just hope that those bees don't unionize anytime soon. That's all I've got for you today. I'll see you back here tomorrow for another edition of This Day in Sports History. This has been an original Thrive Suite production.
Hey there, sports history fan. This is Arnie Chapman, a.k.a. the Football History Dude, and I hope that you enjoyed this recent episode presented by the Sports History Network and were able to learn some good old-fashioned sports history knowledge nuggets. I started the Sports History Network back in 2020 with the mission to help podcasters find a community of like-minded sports history nerds, as well as helping aspiring podcasters to start their own shows. We have a little bit over 30 shows on the network right now covering all sorts of sports history, but as far as I'm concerned, we're just at the toothpick in the ocean moment, that can't even figure it out because there's so much more coming. We wanted to create the ultimate headquarters for sports yesteryear. starting with Podcast Network and our website, but we're going to continue to move into other mediums as well. And here's the cool part, because we want you to be part of our team. So if you're interested in starting your own podcast, or maybe being a guest on one of our shows, or who knows, maybe even writing an article for us over on the website. Seriously, all you gotta do is reach out to us on the contact page over at sportshistorynetwork.com. You can be as technologically savvy as a Neanderthal tapping on a stone trying to figure out this whole hieroglyphics thing back in the day. Again, it doesn't matter, because even if you don't understand the whole podcast space, we have a production team that can pretty much help you out with doing everything. All you gotta do, head over to sportshistorynetwork.com, head to the contact page, fill it out. That message goes right to me, and I'll reach out to you as soon as I can. But for now, dude, I'm through if you're through.